Thank you, everybody, for coming to the November 20th Planning Board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Cheryl, can you please make the roll call?
Joe Burden, Dennis Gagnon,
Here.
Peter Lewis,
Here.
Laura O'Connell,
Here.
Bob Lusardi,
Here.
Heidi Wendell,
Here.
Neil Zuckerman.
Okay. Can I get a motion for approval of the October meeting minutes?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. All in favor? Aye. I'm assuming no objections or abstentions. Okay, thank you. Correspondence. Cheryl, maybe just a quick overview of what we have.
The first item is Dain's Lumber. I think Ron was gonna take that one.
Yes. Ron, can you comment on that?
Yeah. Dain's Lumber was a site plan that came before this board some time ago, was approved, and subsequently the applicant moved to implement the site improvements required that were on the construction plans. They are now at a point where they're essentially done with the construction of the building and most of the site work that was mandated by the construction drawings. There are some changes that were done as field changes that are now coming before you just to determine whether the board accepts those field changes, and we'll review what they are, or whether you want to see the intent of the original site plan followed through. And you've got a letter and some attachments from the design engineer that illustrates the changes being made. In small scale, you'd have an as-built plan. The as-built areas are shown in blue, and we'll go through each of them. If we start on the upper left corner of your site plan in blue, you'll notice that there's a low retaining wall just to the north of the building and behind it. That was done to accomplish some grading that the property owner wanted just for maneuverability. Technically, I see no issues with that, the location layout of that retaining wall. Second item of note is that the outdoor storage that was proposed to the south of the warehouse building that was intended to have a galvanized, black-coated vinyl fence surrounding the entire area of the outdoor storage. The owner, upon occupying the site, finds that to his needs, is not necessary. So he wonders if he can get relief from the installation of that fencing. That's the second area that's before this board to consider. And the third thing, and possibly most important, is the issue of the landscaping that was approved for the front of the building. The site, access to the site is provided through two driveways that merge and then enter the rear of the project on the north property line. That center grass median was intended to be very well landscaped just for screening purposes. None of that screening in the median now exists. It's only a grassed median. And they've relocated a row of evergreen trees just beyond that access road. At my request, they provided some drawings as an attachment to their letter which describes these issues, and it's for the board to decide individually whether any of those things warrant further discussion or may be accepted at this time, or whether you want to see the intent of the original site plan accomplished. So it's really for board discussion at this point.
Okay, thank you, Ron. I have one question, just for clarity, regarding the galvanized security fence. That was just for security, not for any type of screening, correct?
No, it was galvanized. It was going to be black coated just to
an open
minimize the
fence.
visibility. It was only a 6-foot high fence.
Okay.
And as I said, showing on the approved site plan is not currently in place.
Okay, and again, it was just for their original purpose was just for their security.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
As I understood it, right.
That's the way I looked at it also. I just want to confirm that. Any comments or discussion from the board members? Has everybody,
I couldn't
Heidi?
really tell if, about the screening from the photographs. I wonder if, is anybody here from the, yeah, I couldn't tell exactly, I mean, it was really it was great you had photographs, but I couldn't tell what is changed about the screening from them.
So the original site plan had all the screening in the front median right on 9. And so instead of having it there, I pushed it back and created about like a 5-foot tall berm. You'll see on some of the photographs there where the gate is entered.
So here's the drawing.
There should have been some photographs that I took.
Yeah, there were photographs, yeah.
No.
Oh, wow, you have color copies, okay.
I got a nice one shot for that. So right on here, so what we're looking at is right on the median here, and then behind it is where we built the berm up, and then
Yeah.
we also included the trees on top of it. So basically just pushed everything back, and then also curved it in a little bit. You can see all these photos. I curved it into where the gate is to the entrance of the property, and it's curved in a little bit, just so when you have southbound traffic, all the storage on the south side of the building, so it kind of curves it in, so you don't have any visibility to the back as well.
Okay.
That was
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.
a question, from what I recall, where you have the new trees planted now on the berm, directly behind that, that's going to be another phase of another building, correct?
Well,
At a
yes,
later
on the phase 2, at a later date, correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's right on that line. The front of the existing building is basically the front of the phase 2 building.
So for your intent, it was just really to push the screening back?
That's correct, yeah. So if and when the phase 2 does come to fruition, then that would have to put the screening obviously in the front that would be at a separate planning board meeting anyways. But yeah, that would basically, the phase 2 building would take up that whole front area.
Ron, I have a question to you. If this is going to be sort of, if possibly phased, does that have to come back in front of us again?
Yeah, the site plan approval that was granted was in 2 phases. Phase 1 was the warehouse building to the rear, which is now in place. And that's what they're seeking to get resolved at this point. The approval did anticipate a phase 2, a second building in the front, but the timing was not identified, so it's uncertain when that will move forward, but it did encompass the second building in the front.
So it won't come back before the board.
It doesn't have to unless there's changes to that approved construction.
Of the second phase building?
Phase 2 and all of the attendant work associated with it.
Okay, so I have a question regarding the placement where it is now. Would that take, or can that, or would that be approved for screening for that second phase building?
The modified landscaping that we're discussing tonight,
Yeah.
yeah, some of it might remain, much of it would have to be removed or relocated because of the building that's proposed in the front.
I see.
Building in the front is fairly large.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Discussion?
What's in the building that's not gonna have the fence, wouldn't have the fence anymore? What's contained in that?
It's composite decking and lumber and some other building materials, but because we ended up putting up a gate and then also did the berm, that's plenty of security for my eyes. So the security fence had no screening effect. It was basically just a chain link fence that was drawn. So it was mainly for security. I don't see it necessary by any means.
Ron, another quick question. If they decide later on that they want to put that fence up for security reasons, does that come in front of us, or that just goes to the building department?
No, it wouldn't have to, unless you waive it at this point.
Okay. All right, thank you. I have no objections to what's there now. I drive by it basically every day. At this point, do we just have to make a motion to accept it as is? Ron? Or
Yeah,
Steve?
that's all I was seeking. How this all got precipitated is when they completed construction of the building itself and all site improvements, they filed the as-built and asked the building department and myself to certify the completion of all work. Because of the significance of the difference from what was on the approved plans and what exists today, I felt it would be inappropriate without further guidance from the planning board, and that's why they're here tonight.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to accept the as-built as it is now? From somebody?
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Oh, okay.
I'm just concerned about this phase two. I think if we're gonna give relief from this requirement of the planting, particularly the plantings in the front, there has to be an understanding that they'll be put back when phase two comes along. That's what, otherwise, there's no requirement that they put it back in at all.
Steve, how would that be handled?
My understanding of these field changes, and I didn't appreciate that the trees would have to be removed if the Phase 2 building was built until right now, but was that if you agree to these field changes is what they're called, generally speaking, these are a little bit extreme for field changes, so they're looking to have you approve them as built. They can never build that second building and keep the trees where they propose to be now. If they do decide to build that second building, they're going to have to remove those trees, at which time they're going to have to either propose as an additional field change, putting them in somewhere else, or come back to this board and say, hey, you approved this plan with the trees here. We now want to build a building over where these trees are. This is what we're proposing to do to remedy that. And it'll either be leave them out altogether, as Bob points out, which I would think be a problem, or they're going to propose to put them somewhere else.
So how do we qualify that if we say, for the time being, for this first?
What you're doing, you've qualified it. If somebody wants to build something other than what's on the approved site plan, and that includes removing trees that you've now approved, they're going to have to come back to this board and say, we want to remove those trees, otherwise they're in violation of their site plan, and here's what we propose to do about it. So technically, for that second building, if things stayed exactly the way they are now, prior to approving this, they wouldn't have had to come back. If you approve this, there are trees, and tell me if I'm wrong, Ron, have I got the gist of this right?
Right.
There are trees where that second building would go, so if and when the great day comes, they want to build that second building, they're going to have to come back to you. And at that time, you'll deal with the trees issue.
Okay.
Now, if you want to have some assurance as to what's going to happen, if and when that great day comes, you can say, we're not going to approve this until you give us some, at least preliminary indication of what your plan is if you're going to put this second building up. And they haven't got that right now, so they'd have to come back another time, unless you do, and I don't know about it.
If we do end up doing the second building, can we just revert back to what the original site plan was by putting the trees in the center median? Is that?
Ron, Steve?
Yeah, I think just, if we could just expand on what Steve was just saying, possibly the motion might be just to accept the changes under this Phase 1 condition, and delay, or just mandate that they have to be installed if Phase 2 ever proceeds.
And that would be the center medium or entry.
Right. And that keeps it intact, as Bob was suggesting, but just waives it for this immediate Phase 1 work.
So the motion would be to approve the as-built plan as the approved site plan on condition that if the building for Phase 2 is ever built, the trees must be installed as per the initial site plan.
Thank you, Steve. Can anybody have any comments regarding that possible motion? Can I get a motion?
But the trees are gonna, I don't really have a problem with it, but I'm just making a comment. The trees, when planted, the idea is they grow and they create more screening, so it's a little, I don't know, they might
About
have to put
taking
in
them down.
bigger trees or something, I don't
Trees in
know.
front of them.
Yeah, like, but whatever, that's, I don't know.
Well, we're looking for a motion to either accept or not accept
Right.
what's in place with conditions on it for the second phase. So Can I get a motion of what Steve had said from anybody?
I think Steve makes sense.
Okay. Heidi had some motion? Laura, second it? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any objections, abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
The next item is Hudson Highland Reserve request for a second 90-day extension of final approval. Steve, did you want me to read this, or did you want to?
No, I can explain it easily enough, unless the chairman wants you to.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
So, under the town code, once you receive conditional final approval for a subdivision, you must get final approval within 180 days. And if you don't do that, you need to apply for an extension of time. The board is empowered to give repeated 90-day extensions of time. If you find that there's cause to do so, that's a fancy way of saying unless things have substantially changed since you granted the approval, you pretty much have to grant the 90-day extension of time. So I'm not sure exactly when the 180 days is up, but they want an additional 90 days. So maybe Glenn, you could fill that in?
It's about the third Thursday in December. I mean, it was granted in September at your meeting. I'd have to figure out the exact date, but it'll be around sometime in December, and of course, you don't always meet in December, so.
Okay, so that's when the 90-day extension would run from when it expires, not from now when you grant it.
So it would run from the
Third Thursday in December, or whatever the exact time is, the clerk can certainly figure out the date you granted the approval on. And it would be 180 days from that, plus 90 days from the date of the expiration, or would-be expiration.
Thank you, Steve. Can I get a motion for that to grant the second 90-day extension?
Yeah, I'll make them up.
Thank you, Peter. Second? Laura, thank you. Any, all in favor? Aye. No objections, no abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item is an escrow return request for Corbett, Old Smith Farm Road, East Mountain Road North.
Okay.
So the way that this works is that this board checks to see if there's any outstanding bills. If there are any outstanding bills, then you don't release the escrow. If there are not any outstanding bills, you make a recommendation to the town board to release the escrow. And that's done by motion to recommend to the town board that the escrow be released. If everyone votes in favor, the secretary will communicate to the town board that motion was made, and at the next town board meeting, as soon as the town board can get to it, there'll be a resolution releasing the escrow, and then the property owner will get their money back. I can tell you that we don't have any outstanding bills on Corbett.
Yeah, neither do we.
Okay. Can I get a motion to release the escrow amount?
Okay, you're not really.
No?
You're recommending releasing the escrow.
Okay. It doesn't require a
Goes
vote?
to the town.
It does require,
Oh, okay.
you gotta tell the
So
town
I'll
board.
only
to
make a
take it.
recommendation that they release
You
it.
got it.
Thank you, Steve. And,
I'll make the motion.
okay, thank you. Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
And then the next is an escrow return request for Raju, 1135 Route 90 Garrison.
We also do not have any outstanding bills on this.
All right.
Okay. I'd like to make a recommendation that they release it. Can I get a motion for that?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Peter. Second? Laura, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
And the last correspondence item is Hudson Valley Shakespeare Artist Housing Restoration Bond. Ron, did you want to, sorry, do you want Ron to discuss?
Hey, Ron, could you enlighten us on that one?
Sure. I mean, I think the entire board's very familiar with the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. You granted site plan approval that has evolved into that major construction that's going on at the site right now. They later came in for a Phase 2 to address some aspect of the artist housing that was proposed in their overall site plan. That was subsequently approved by the board. At this point, they are seeking to post a restoration bond because they're ready to get started in that area. So they filed with the planning board a request for that development of a performance bond amount. You've got a memorandum from my office that's dated November 19th that, I'm sorry, that goes back to the time when they first made that request in October. And we've identified the amount of the bond that's recommended and a corresponding inspection fee. And it's just a matter for, again, the planning board to, if you find this acceptable, these amounts acceptable, just make a recommendation to the town board that they accept these amounts so the monies can be posted and the applicant can move forward with work in that area of the project.
And you're happy with the values?
Yeah, I've set the bonding amount. This is not an amount that they established.
Okay.
And it's both a restoration bond amount that's to be posted as well as an associated inspection fee.
So we have to make a recommendation to the town board to accept that,
Right.
and then we need a motion for that. Steve.
Right, it's a recommendation, just like recommendation of release of the escrows, only there's recommendation of setting the amounts of the bonds.
Okay. Can I get a motion to?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Peter. Second. Thank you, Laura. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. We have a referral from the town regarding the Depot Theater. I reviewed the plans. I didn't see anything on that, but maybe, Steve, you could probably shed a little bit more light on what this entails as far as the board's concerned.
Sure. The Depot Theater is offering to dedicate to the town a building called the Backstage Building, and it's going to be built at the rec center property, and these initial plans have been prepared. Now, since the building's being dedicated to the town, it's going to be a town building, and the town is not subject to the land use regulations or the zoning, which is otherwise applicable in the town because, well, it's town building. In allowing the building to be built, the town has to approve the plans. It's not a substitute for a building permit, but it is a substitute for any planning board or zoning board approvals. The town board looks over the plans and says, yes, if you build this, we will accept it. However, the town board is not expert at, although there are some members who are, knowledgeable about building, is not expert at reviewing building plans. And so they've sent the building plans that have been received by, have been submitted, by the Depot Theater to the planning board, to Ron Gaynor, and to the building inspector to see if you have any comments on items that jump out at you as something that might be inappropriate or there are items of concern. I think there are some people from the Depot Theater here who are prepared to make a brief presentation to you, if you feel you need it, to assist you in deciding if you want to make any comments to the town board in regard to the proposed building plans. It's a voluntary referral just for any comments the board might, in its discretion, wish to make.
Okay, thank you. Who's here from the, would you like to comment on, shed a little light? I've reviewed the drawings. They seem fine as far as I'm concerned, but.
Yeah, I'm Steve Ives, Chair of the Board at the Depot. This is Peter Weed, Vice President of the Depot, and also our resident architect on the board, thank God. And he's done this wonderful design. It's a very straightforward building, slab on grade. It's designed to efficiently house all of the backstage material and operations that are going on for the theater that are currently scattered all over town, including some set pieces that are kept at the dump. So one good thing about the building is that we are also going to add 2 bathrooms and storage there, which will be available to the rec department for use for the kids that use those playing fields up underneath the water tower. So.
Is that what is, I'm assuming it's seasonal, because I saw, excuse me, on the drawings that those 2 restrooms are unheated.
They are going to have electric heaters in them to keep them pipes from freezing in shoulder seasons, but yes, they would not be year-round use when the fields are not being used by the.
Okay, so basically, wintertime, there'll be some type of heat in there. Does it meet, I'm assuming that plan review with the building department meets code regarding insulation and all that, so, okay. Thank you.
For the benefit of the board and the public sitting here tonight, could you just make a brief presentation as to where the building is, what property it's on, just to give some outline so everybody understands what you're describing?
It's
Thank you,
on
Ron.
the parcel of land. Oh, sure. It's on the parcel of land that the rec center sits on. There's a large water tower there that looks out over the field that fronts onto Route 9D. And the building would essentially be located off to the side of the water tower, right back in that area. And there's currently a road that already accesses that. It's an old roadbed that we intend to reactivate. And then a parking lot would be on the far side of the building, so not visible from Route 9D.
Okay.
And how large is the building? How many stories?
2 floors. As Steve said, it's slab on grade. It's 5,995 square feet on 2 levels. Height of the building is according to the conservation easement, is 31 feet 3 inches, the maximum height. Yeah.
There's no handicap access to the second floor, though?
Correct.
Okay.
Not at present, right.
Okay. Ron, do you have any comments on any of that?
Yeah, we were given some reduced scale plans, and again, on behalf of the board, we looked at it basically for zoning compliance, and it meets basic zoning setback criteria, the bulk regulations. It's in a location of the site that is a reasonable area for the building to be sited. It should not be obtrusive to anything exterior to the property itself. It's obviously the site of the rec center. And looking at the site plans, there's wetlands and wetland buffers that approach the area of the proposed building. I would just have some suggestions to assure that those wetland limits and wetland buffer lines are staked out prior to construction. And typically what the board would always see for any site plan improvements is to have those drawings incorporate the standard site plan notations that you put on all site plans, which is a straight-ahead issue. We can provide them those notes that they can just insert into their drawings. But with the proviso of those few additions, I don't have any issues with the plans.
Thank you. Does the board have any comments regarding the project? Steve, Bob?
I
Yeah,
can
go
wait if any of the board members has any questions.
Um,
But I have a number of questions.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
There's no theater in this building, correct? Correct. Why not? Why not have a theater?
It's not allowed by the easement on the property by Cliffside.
Right? You have a rehearsal room in there?
Yeah, we have a small rehearsal space, which is actually, since our theater stage is so tiny, it's actually just an exact duplicate of our floor, the footprint of our stage. And what that allows us to do is rehearse and prep shows off-site and free up additional nights at the theater, which we can program and generate more revenue and use the theater a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, one of the things, I'm sorry, Bob, one of the things I neglected to mention, the recreation center property is subject to a conservation easement held by the Open Space Institute. And it limits the number of activities that can be taken. One of the things we have to do in order to have this building become a reality, and it's in the works, is to have OSI agree to an amendment to their conservation easement. And they limit the activities that can be done on the property, and I doubt very much they'd agree that this be turned into an active theater as opposed to a passive backstage building. So that's the reason behind it.
Thank you, Steve.
I mean, there's the conservation easement, there's also a common facilities agreement as well. These are very elaborate documents that I've reviewed online. I guess my comment is, if you're going to be looking for an amendment to the conservation easement, it just seems to me, I mean, I assume there's going to be a long-term lease as a lease back as part, how many years are we talking about?
40 at present. We're hoping for 45.
So I mean, I can understand if it's a theater, that's a community resource, and that's something that this community needs, and for your purposes, it would seem to me to be better to have a theater and then the backstage together, right? Now, I mean, at the end of 40 years, the town would get this property back, and assuming that the Depot Theater isn't around anymore, they're not in business at that time, just not that that's going to happen, but if you're not here, the town takes back a building that is basically a trade shop and offices, right? So, my thought is, I mean, if you're going to go to open spaces, unless they've already said absolutely no, but I would think that you'd want to add a theater to this property and have something that the community can be a resource for the community going forward. And is worth the effort to do that. Otherwise, I understand that it's a benefit to you to have this facility, but it'll be a facility on town property, and it's sort of an indirect public benefit, but a theater, I think, would make it much more direct.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not a specialist on the particulars of what the easement says, but we've been given very clear direction that would not be acceptable to OSI. What we are trying to do is put a mentorship program inside this building so that kids, many of whom are interested in the theater arts, lighting, design, scenic design, costumes, have a place to go to learn some of these trades. It's a very viable and good career path for a lot of kids in this community that they don't have access to this kind of training. It can lead to a particularly good job working on Broadway or working in the arts. Doesn't necessarily require a college degree. And so we think of the building as an important structure, but the heart of the program is a mentorship program that gives these kids something that they can do in that regard. So it's not, it's an important thing that pulls all of our disparate backstage elements together. It's extremely difficult and inefficient for us to have all of these parts of our operations scattered around the town. But and it is a big undertaking for a small organization like ours to build a building this large and then to give it to the town. We're going to be fundraising and raising all the money ourselves. So the idea of trying, I agree with you. If I could put a 250-seat theater right there, I'd love to. But I don't see that that's an option that we as an organization could possibly take on.
And also the parking would be the stopper for that, to be able to park.
If you put the building near where the recreation building is now, there's a pretty big parking lot serving that recreation building. You could put it, on the other side of that parking lot, and you could share the parking.
We have had conversations with the rec commission, and they're very particular about us not overlapping with their parking needs and the different times that they use that building. So that would be an issue that would prevent us from being able to put a theater there.
Steve, just to qualify, this is in front of us just really for referral, more of a courtesy than anything. I mean, we have really no...
Yes, that's absolutely true, but if you want to make comments to the town board, things like Bob brought up, the utility of the building might be spread to other uses, or perhaps a larger building might be considered something. Feel free to make those comments. We'll put them into a letter and send them over, and the board would certainly consider them as far as that goes. It's here to get that type of, not only, gee, you have to look out, we think, I don't know, the stormwater runoff is a problem or something like that, or gee, we think the parking's inadequate or whatever it might be. If those are comments you want to make, that's fine. But if you want to make positive comments like, gee, we think that the utility of the building could be expanded, that's fine too.
Okay. So next step, and Bob made some good comments and such, and some good suggestions, but there's another entity involved, open space and such. How do we get that in his comments, say, for instance, in front
I
of?
believe Ron's going to be writing a memo to the board.
Correct.
We could I don't want to put more work on Ron, but he could certainly round up your comments, circulate an email saying, these are the comments that the board made. If I've missed anything, let me know. And he can just bullet point, when the matter came before the planning board, the following comments were proffered, and, then you put them out there for the town board to consider.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any other comments from the board?
If those comments are kind of dead in the water, I'm not sure exactly why we're doing.
I'm not quite sure myself, so, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't want to support pressuring OSI to give up more of the land, to have more of the land be developed. I'm not really necessarily in favor of that, so I would prefer, some members of the board think this would be better, to have a bigger building. I need to know more. I wouldn't favor building a big theater there myself. So, just my 2 cents.
Okay. Ron, do you need any other information from us, or something a little bit more concise, or?
No, as I say, they've got very standard civil drawings and very detailed building plans through mechanical, structural. And as I said, I mostly was looking at the issue of site plan related issues, and bulk dimensional requirements are all satisfied.
And you reviewed all that, so.
Right. And I just had those few comments that I offered earlier.
But there should be a table showing compliance with the.
And it's on here.
Oh, is it already?
The-
I did not see
it's-
that.
Yep, it's
All
on
right,
there.
I must have missed it.
So the next step, as far as we're concerned right now, is we've made comments, or some of the board members has made comments. Ron's going to be putting a letter together, distributing it for our review, I guess.
I'll draft it, submit it as a draft to you internally.
Okay.
You can provide comments, have it finalized and voted on, and then we'll move it to the
Then it
town
goes to
board.
the board. Okay, the town board. Okay, is there anything that we need officially now, just to end this conversation?
No, it was a comment session. You've made comments. You didn't need a resolution or anything.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good luck with the project. And fundraising.
I'm glad they both helped out with set design and so forth. I met with them a couple weeks ago. I asked the same question as well. The theater there as well, I thought it was a good idea too, but with the restrictions that they have, obviously they can't do it. But basically, what they're saying, the design and helping these kids out, I think it's a great program they're gonna be putting together for our community.
It seems like a great program.
Learn how to do set designs, lighting and so forth like that, and maybe, like you said, don't have, things with AI these days, you're looking at everything, more college kids, there's no reason for a lot of kids to go to college anymore, this is another great avenue for some kids to learn things.
Yeah, I think also the off-site rehearsal area is good, because this way you frees up the space.
Now they can run their plays longer, maybe instead of 10 days, they can go 20 or something
And
like that.
breaking things down, putting them back up and such, so, good. Good luck with the project. Thank you very much. Okay, Steve, I am going to definitely need your help on this next one, referring to local laws. There are 4 items, I believe. I mean, I read through them, but,
I'm sure you all read it.
yeah.
I'm going to give them all to you one after another as opposed to breaking them, if it's okay.
That's fine.
And if you want to make comments, just identify which local law you want to make a comment on, and that way we can report to the town board. I think it'll just go a little quicker this way. So, I'm sure you all remember the Krasnicki, well, most of you remember the Krasnicki application. They wanted to put large petroleum storage tanks on property that was fairly near, was it the Clove Creek run, or I forget which creek it was near? I don't remember.
Hardin Brook.
Okay, near Brook.
It's the stream that runs down off of the reservoir.
And under the town code, the way that it was written, storage tanks like that were a possibility on environmentally sensitive land. The whole town of Philipstown is an aquifer area. It's actually a pretty fragile aquifer area. You have an aquifer overlay district in your code, which covers the entire town. It's broken into sub-districts, some of which are more sensitive. I mentioned Clove Creek earlier, and some of which are less sensitive, but they're all sensitive to one degree or another. And the Krasnicki application was modified. They decided that they were going to go a different way and not put in the storage tanks, but it really brought to the forefront the issue of allowing petroleum storage in the town of Philipstown, particularly in regard to the issue of the sensitive, environmentally sensitive aquifer that you have really over the entire town. And so the town board formed a zoning update advisory committee to study the issue of the viability of petroleum storage in the town of Philipstown. And having looked at it, they came up with 4 areas, well, 3 really, areas of concern. And the first one was overall commercial petroleum storage tanks. The large tanks like you see across the river in Newburgh, that type of thing, the large for resale or redistribution tanks, commercially storing oil or gasoline or other petroleum products. And the second one was gasoline stations. Given the environmental sensitivity and frankly the way the town's been built up as far as its zoning, a great deal of Philipstown is residential as opposed to commercial. You only have a couple of commercial strips. Whether it was wise to limit the area where gasoline stations could be put in. The third was, well, frankly, properties like Krasnicki. If you had to have a home heating oil storage and distribution business, if you had a truck depot, something like that, a business that was mostly a commercial enterprise but had an accessory element of storage of petroleum products to it. We called them hybrid petroleum storage facilities, where it would be appropriate, if anywhere, in the town to have them. And lastly, there was a kind of an odd provision in your zoning that was brought up, and that is, you know, of course, that you have use tables, and the use tables tell you what uses are allowed in whatever districts there are in the town. But there was a provision in the code that said that if there is a use that is not listed in the use table as either being permitted or prohibited, then you can go to the town board and apply for a special permit to allow that new use in the town. Now, the criteria for a special permit is somewhat flexible. There's some discretion given to a board, but it's the type of thing that's ripe for litigation. If the record doesn't go in right, you could wind up with the town being forced to accept uses that it would otherwise not want, it would never allow. So the recommendation of the Zoning Update Advisory Committee was to eliminate that provision and say that the only uses allowed in town are the uses that are listed in the use table. And if there's some question as to whether a particular use falls into a category, for example, service businesses, then you go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and ask whether you fall within the definition or not, if you have some unusual business that perhaps we haven't thought of, So based on the Zoning Advisory Update Committee's recommendations, we came up with 4 draft local laws. And the first one is local law number 6. That's the petroleum storage local law. And what it does is prohibit commercial petroleum storage facilities in the town of Philipstown. Petroleum storage facilities are defined as petroleum storage facilities at which the contents of the tanks are used for resale or other commercial redistribution purposes. This does not include gasoline stations or hybrid facilities. The Zoning Update Advisory Committee had toyed with the idea of, well, gee, maybe if the tanks are small enough, it would be okay that we limit it to 10,000 gallons or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, when you look into it, commercial storage facilities, they can't use smaller tanks. They're just, you'd be refilling them constantly. They only have bigger ones. So the local law was drafted to just outlaw them altogether. I would note in regard to this that there was an extensive study, investigation, I guess would be a better word, undertaken as to the location and availability of petroleum storage facilities in the area. And in this area of the Hudson Valley, there are ample petroleum storage facilities available. I mentioned Newburgh already. There are others in other areas. If they are not allowed in the town of Philipstown, and they should not be, it's not going to have any implications or impact whatsoever on the availability of petroleum in this area. There's plenty of storage available as it is. So that's the first one, local law number 6. Local law number 7 is the gasoline station overlay district law. Having examined the town and its commercial areas and the aquifer map, aquifer overlay map, I think it's called? Aquifer overlay map that's attached to the zoning code. The committee determined that gasoline stations should be limited to 2 narrow commercial corridors. The first is properties along Route 9, commencing at the intersection with Route 301 and continuing southward to the intersection of Route 9 and Route 202. That's basically the southern border of the town. The second one is commencing on Route 9 at the intersection of 301 and then continuing westward on 301 to the village of Nelsonville. So those are the only 2 areas that gasoline stations, if this law is passed, will be allowed. In those areas, gasoline stations will only be allowed upon grant of site plan, of course, and a special use permit. The local law ups the requirements for special use permits to not only those that are set forth in the zoning code, but also the informational requirements that the aquifer overlay district imposes for any construction within the aquifer overlay district. So it's kind of a beefed up special permit application that would be required with an emphasis on possible environmental impacts of installing a gasoline station. There's also provisions that no gasoline station will be allowed within 1,000 feet of a state or federally regulated wetland or a stream or an intermittent, that is seasonal, stream. And also, no gasoline station will be allowed within 1,000 feet of another gasoline station. And the reasons for that, I don't want to go too far afield, but of course are you have that much more gasoline in close proximity to other reservoirs of gasoline, and the aggregate result is the possibility of a much larger pollution plume in the event that there was multiple leaks. Additionally, keep in mind the overlay districts are along pretty busy, maybe not 301 so much, but I mean certainly 9, commercial roadways, and gasoline stations tend to have a lot of people pulling in and pulling out, and that just exacerbates the already, as has been discussed many times, bad situation as far as entering and exiting 9. So all those regulations were put into place, or will be put into place. Local law number 8 is the hybrid petroleum storage facilities I already talked about. The local law creates an overlay district for them. It is coterminous with the gasoline station overlay district, exact same area, and the same special use permit and limitations as far as locations go. In addition to that, for the hybrid petroleum storage facilities, the containers with petroleum in them are limited to 25,000 gallons. That number is because the average size is between 20 and 30,000 gallons as far as the smaller container sizes for local facilities. So they kind of split the difference and said 25 seems about right. Lastly, there's local law number 9. As I mentioned earlier, code section 175-10 has a provision in it that allows unlisted uses upon grant of a special permit from the town board, and what this local law does is eliminate that provision and add a provision saying that if there's a law that's a law use that is not specifically listed or specifically prohibited, and you feel that it falls within one of the specifically listed uses, you can go to the ZBA for an interpretation that it does or does not fall within those listed uses. So those are the 4 local laws that are before you. The town board has sent it to you for review and comment, and you have 30 days from the referral to send a letter over. If you have no comments, that's fine. If you do have comments, we'll put them into report letters on each one of the laws and say this is what the planning board's comments were on 6, 7, 8, or 9.
Thank you, Steve. Any comments from the board or discussion?
Sorry, just a question for Steve. Sorry, the gas station zone was what? 30, could you just like run those
Location.
two? Yeah, the location.
Sure. Route 9 from the intersection with 301 down to basically the southern, along 9, the southern border of the town, which is the intersection with Route 202. And then from the eastern border of Nelsonville on Route 301 to Route 9, the intersection with Route 9.
These would be available for the construction of gasoline stations.
Those are the areas in which gasoline stations could be maintained. Existing gasoline stations in areas other than that would continue, but they would be deemed legal non-conforming uses.
Was there any provision, I'm not sure if I heard it or not, say from 301 going north to the Dutchess border?
No.
No, so nothing could go
South
there.
only.
South.
North gets you into the Clove Creek aquifer area. It's
Yeah.
very sensitive. It would be completely inappropriate.
So that's been eliminated completely, or?
That will be
out of-
eliminated in the
okay.
event that,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Now, that is, again, if there are I don't know that there are, but if there is one, it continues as a legal
Well,
non-conforming
there's,
use.
there's one at Fishkill Road and.
All right, well, then that's gonna continue. And by the way, convenience stores are also considered gasoline stations to the extent that they sell gasoline.
So, Steve, just so clarity here, Audemars was in front of the board, planning board many months ago, they haven't been back since. So that was, they could not put that gas station where they want right now.
If they do not fall within the overlay district, they could not.
Right, so right now,
Bobby,
would be,
can you take a mic so people can hear you? Can you take a mic, please?
my question is, Audemars was in front of the planning board several months ago, right? He hadn't been back in quite some time. They proposed a Dunkin' Donuts and a gas station where the old Audemars is today, right across the street from Beatty and Watson. So that would prevent them from moving forward to put a gas station at that location with these new laws. Is that correct?
Yeah, it would if that doesn't fall within the defined geographic area that I've discussed. Now, keep in mind, they can apply for a use variance, and if they get a use variance from the ZBA, then they could in fact put in a gasoline station.
But they have to get a
Another
variance.
possibility is, these local laws aren't chiseled in stone. If the town board decides to put in a grandfathering provision, you could grandfather gas stations that have, applications pending before boards or what have you. But as written, yeah, it couldn't go in.
Thank you for clarification.
Thanks, Steve. Any other comments?
One quick question. For the portion that's south of 301, does that include the area that's the crossing for the AT and the AT land over by,
Appalachian Market.
yeah, the Appalachian Trail and the, its buffer land at Graymore, or?
The way the laws is written, gas stations are allowed right now, I believe, as service businesses all throughout the town, but except for one district. I think it's the M. I'm not sure exactly what it falls within, but in any event, the way the law is written, if gas stations are allowed in the underlying district, then they're allowed in the overlay district as well. But if they're not allowed in the underlying district, then they're not allowed in the overlay district.
Okay, so
Follow?
it may be that they're already not allowed along the AT
Yeah,
corridor.
there's that one little section as you go south, I forget exactly what it is, but they're not allowed there now, and they wouldn't be allowed
Oh,
under
okay,
this.
okay.
Okay. What's the next step for us regarding this? Memo going back to the town board?
You have 4 local laws before you. If you wish to make comments upon them, tell me what those comments are. Just like Ron's doing with Depot Theater, I'll prepare a memo or a letter to the town board saying there was, review of these 4 local laws by the planning board, and they had the following comments. They were in favor of them. They were not in favor of them. They were generally in favor, but had these concerns, or they took no position. Whatever it is you want to say, we'll say in the letters.
Me personally, I'm fine with the way they're written, so any other comments or concerns that you want to get in front of the town board?
Well, I guess I do. I don't see why those 2 areas should be open up to, if we're already in a environmentally sensitive area aquifer, so forth, why we would allow the construction. We've got, what, 5 gas stations already in town. To build yet another one south on Route 9, one on 301 going to Nelsonville. Just seems like dangerous. So 6, 8, and 9 all seem fine to me. 7 seems a little dicey.
I agree with Peter, and I don't think there should be gas stations close to Fonstock or near the Appalachian Trail buffer. You know, I just don't, I think south of 301, there's some pretty sensitive looking land. Maybe it's already wetlands, so they couldn't build it there, I don't know, but it's awfully close to Fonstock and the Appalachian Trail corridor, and it doesn't seem appropriate to me to have gas stations there. Or on the opposite side of the street, because it's too close to Fonstock as well. I mean, at 301 and 9, I know, for example, that when the Hudson Highlands Land Trust looked at the natural resource value of that area of Route 9, that's a very high value natural resource area on their map. So I think that's I agree with Peter that that's not a good spot for gas stations. That'll be my comment.
Or any comment? Steve, what do you need from us in order to get that information to the board?
Well, what I have so far is that you're generally in favor of the local laws. Peter would be in favor of banning gas stations altogether, if I understood what he said. And that Heidi wants to either consider a ban or at least limitations on locations allowed within the proposed overlay district. I really don't have any other comments to add to the memo. I mean, if you want more, I'll of course put them in, but.
No, I can't think of any. Just wasn't quite sure if that was conveyed clear enough for.
Well, like I said, I'll circulate a draft, but that's what it's gonna be in the draft so far.
That good? Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you. Okay. We have a public hearing this evening. There was a sign-in sheet. Whoever would like to make any comments, please make sure you signed up.
We can just ask them when they're ready, 'cause I didn't do like a separate sheet. When we're ready, we'll just say, does anyone want to speak?
Okay, well,
After Margaret comes.
okay. Margaret?
Good evening, Margaret McManus with Boad and Watson, representing Mr. Szypula. We've been before the board a few times. They are proposing to build a pond in their backyard.
Can you step closer to the mic?
It's a two-level pond with a waterfall between. They are seeking a steep slopes permit in order to build the pond in the backyard. And part of the ordinance asks that we show an alternative that would meet the criteria and not be within the steep slopes, and that is this second area that we have shown here, which is on the side of their property and closer to the road. We feel that the one that is behind the house is a better location. It's already a disturbed area. It lends itself to a pond in an easier fashion than the other one. We'd have to excavate more. There's also more trees in the area that is to the side of the house, where all of the trees have already been disturbed behind the house. So it's a clearer area. And I'll let me know if you have any questions.
Ron, you have reviewed this, and I think you have some comments.
As the design engineer indicates, the project's been before the board for some months now. Planning board has made a site inspection of the property, as has the conservation board. what they're proposing in regulated steep slopes is not permitted unless this board grants them a special permit. The whole purpose of the submittal of an alternative design in unregulated slopes is required for them to, or for you to consider granting a special permit. And they're trying to identify that their alternate location that does not involve any steep slopes disturbance, which obviates the need for a special permit, would create lesser environmental impact than where they're proposing it. Now, as I said, both you and the Conservation Board have been out there. Conservation Board has previously issued you correspondence, which I've provided to the board again for this meeting, and they very much prefer that the alternate location that's being proposed outside of the steep slopes be supported by this planning board. So their point is that the alternate location provides the owner with substantial use of their property while not setting an uncomfortable precedent of constructing a non-essential improvement on regulated steep slopes. So the purpose of tonight, obviously, is to conduct a public hearing. It's required by code. At the close of the public hearing, this board should discuss which design they feel should be supported, and then move that to some action by this board. So that's the matter that's before you tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Any comments from the board regarding this proposal? Yes.
You might want to wait for public comment before you ask the board to, because
Thank you,
public comment might inform the board's comments.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate that. Anybody from the public want to have a comment? Can you please come up to the microphone and identify yourself, please? And
My name is Nancy Lovell, and I live at 20 Cliffside Court, which is up the road from number 4. In talking to our neighbors, we question why such a large water feature. From my understanding, it's about 22,000 gallons of water with a 4-foot deep pond area would be needed to be constructed because the residence is primarily uninhabited for 9 months of the year. Since Mr. Szypula purchased the property, his family is only there on June, July, and August. So why have a water feature unless they plan to shut it off for the 9 months they're not there? The other thought about having a water feature this large with the depth of a pond, are they planning to have a fence around it to prevent it from being a nuisance, to keep kids away from perhaps getting into it? Because right now their property is unfenced. The other issue is, I think I had read or heard somewhere that the proposal is, even though no one is there for a majority of the time, that alarms or caretakers are available in case something goes wrong. But if the caretaker isn't there 24/7, live there, and apparently they don't, because we drive by all the time and there's nobody living there. If an alarm goes off, it takes time for that person. That means something detrimental has happened. There's a leak or something of 22,000 gallons, and it takes time for somebody to get there to address the problem, fix it, and by then, a lot of water possibly could be released and cause damage, perhaps to the property, going down at number 26, because again, it would be on a sort of a slope, going down to number 26 Cliffside, which is the property just below number 4, or it could travel down upland, down towards down that road to other houses off of that road. The other thing we wanted a question about, where is the water going to come from? Is it going to be a self-contained water feature? that they're going to haul in trucks like for pool water or something and fill it that way? Or is there going to be an alternate water source? And if so, where is that water going to be coming from? Because where we live, it's all water wells. Let's see. And the other issue would be if the construction is approved, where are the trucks going to park? Right now, both the section of upland where their property is, as well as Cliffside, which is something I'd also like to address. The roads are narrow. There's really no place to put big construction vehicles. So those are the questions that many of us were talking about and among ourselves. But there's also another issue that came to our concern. Again, there's 4 of us that live in addition to number 4 on Cliffside Court. And we wanted to take this opportunity to file a grievance, actually, and bring to the town's attention that there's a dangerous situation regarding Cliffside, the road itself, that we're seeking to redress. Since Mr. Szypula purchased the house at number 4 Cliffside, we've seen a severe narrowing of the roadway that runs directly in front of his property. And as is clearly evident on the survey that he submitted for his proposed water feature with a request for special use permit, it clearly shows he has encroached approximately 14 feet of the cliffside road surface for his front yard and his driveway. And this was done without our consent and without asking us to sign an easement, which I think would be required when somebody wants to take that much of the road away from us.
Okay, those are other issues that we would have to discuss separately. Ron, any input on what she's referring to on these?
No, I'd have to look at the design plans to understand what kind of intrusions there might be into the private right-of-way. So that could be established separately and
But that would have nothing to do with what we're
it
have in
could-
front of us
Right, it could be a
tonight.
matter that the town CEO might want to be involved in.
Right, and I guess that's why we're asking the question. We think this might be a violation of some kind of code or law, but we don't know, and we didn't have the proof until this survey was presented. So if that's the case, and they've taken that much of our road, then instead of building a $1,000 water feature, perhaps that money should be used to return the road to us, to move back what they've taken in terms of plantings and a driveway. So we just don't know where to go.
I can appreciate your point, and it's well taken, but it is a different issue, so that's not in front of us
I understand
now,
that.
so-
If you
and-
could give some guidance as to where we should go?
You need to go to Greg Warner, the code enforcement officer. If Greg Warner issues a notice of violation, this board will not process the application, well, at least won't grant it until the violation is resolved. So next stop
So it
would
would be
be the
Greg,
building
okay.
inspector's office.
Okay.
So does that put a break on what we're doing?
There's no violation outstanding right now. that does
As far
not.
as we know.
You wouldn't adopt an approval resolution tonight anyway. Most you do is close the public hearing and ask Ron to prepare them, so it's gonna have no impact.
Okay.
If Greg issues one between now and the next meeting, then it might.
Okay, so we can ask or vote on preparing resolution for the approval of this project.
If that's what you decide, I mean, there's the issue of the alternative, but yes.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you. I think the next step is to, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were just letting her get it.
My name is Louis Mattei. I also live on Cliffside Court on the far end of it. And the paved part of the road down there is 11 feet wide from one edge to the other. And in the one side, I'll say the western side, you have bushes that are not trimmed up to the edge of the road. They encroach on the road also. The original owner, Alex Campbell, he did pave as part of his building. He paved the road, which was nice. And then when he moved in, his partner put rocks right along the edge to make sure nobody runs on the lawn. Since then, when it was sold to the present owner, the landscaping company came and planted trees. And my wife stopped, and I also stopped and pointed out, you're planting trees basically on the road, not on the pavement, but adjacent to the road. So if the road ever does get widened, those trees are going to have to come out.
Okay, I hate to interrupt you, but I believe that's a completely different issue than we're having this public hearing for. So.
Another thing is, when I was a kid, if we found a lot with water in it, we were always playing there. If you're going to have a water feature that's 4 feet deep, I think that could be just like a swimming pool that is not locked up. So that might be a problem. Then a third concern is if something does fail and you have a situation like you did here in Cold Spring when we had those floods, is that going to be a concern for Upland Drive? Or will the water go down towards Arden Drive? Those are our questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Ron, regarding this question, not question or comments, equating it to a pool, does that come into play here with what we're doing? Or is that just a completely different?
I would not know.
Okay.
I would not know.
I mean, it's a good point, and I'm not sure how it fits our position on what we
Maybe
approve
you
or
could
don't.
seek guidance from the building department or the town CEO. He might have some opinion to offer.
Has Greg seen the drawings? I'm assuming he has, but I won't guarantee it.
I can't say that he has.
Yeah, okay.
I can speak to that.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I've had several conversations with Greg before we made the application and then just recently, and it is considered a pond, it is not a pool, and it doesn't require fencing.
Does not.
Does not.
Okay.
There's someone else.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name's Beatrice Copeland, and I'm actually Michael's neighbor to the south. So the alternate location, my house is just below it. And I had maybe a question of clarification on this document, from, I guess this is from you, from Baby Watson. So the proposed location, we see the alternate location, it says to the north. And is that just a typo? Because this is technically to the south.
Can you tell me what you're reading off of?
From the document,
Okay,
October 2.
What's the nomenclature of the paragraph that you have?
It's this,
Oh, November 2?
October 2.
October
And it's
2.
this little piece here. It says, it's number 7, comparison of layout and alternate layout locations.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have, I have a November 6th correspondence, so.
From last
Yeah, I didn't have. bring that with me.
I was just confused because I was just confused by the proposed location and then the alternate location. That looks like it's actually south and not north. Is that correct? It's just a typo? Okay. Got it. Right. So living just below there, and on all of that area where the southern proposed location is is currently all forest, and there's a lot of wildlife activity that comes through there, and I can attest, being neighbors to this plot, the greater disturbance would be on that south side. It's currently all forest, and I know the western location, there is already a clearing. I understand it requires special permit, but as far as disrupting the current kind of habitats or ecological situation, and as is noted, it would be a lot more tree removal at this southern alternate location. And, you know, we love our little neighborhood on Upland, and we love the wildlife and nature that is able to thrive there. So I would just hope to keep that in mind, what is actually going to disturb more of the current habitat. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else?
Hello, my name is Susan Ansbach. I don't live on Cliffside Drive. I've just been listening for the first time. I realize it may have been, but this issue may have been before the board for a while. But listening, I would just request if the board could keep the issue open, if you will, for submission of a written response, let's say for 7 days after the close of public hearing. So some of us who may have just been educated on this issue have a time to submit a written response. Excuse me, I don't feel confident tonight to make any kind of a presentation that would be relevant to what's been said, but I would like the opportunity to submit something in writing. I'm not asking for a lot of time, but I would just ask the board to keep it open for 7 days for written submission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Steve, I thought that we would probably be closing the public hearing. Does it make sense, or can we close it but still keep it open for other written comments?
Yes, you certainly have the option of closing the public hearing as far as oral comments, except for an X number of days in which you'll continue to accept written comments. It's not really a problem, but I would point out that if you do that, you're not going to be in a position to direct Ron to prepare resolutions. You really can't say prepare one way or the other until you're done receiving public comments.
Completely closed.
Yeah,
okay.
so you'd have to wait until next month before you, had all the information before you in order to direct him one way or the other.
Okay. Any comments from the board?
The letter from Andy from the Conservation Board. Oh, I'm sorry, would you like to speak again?
Sure, or I can wait until you're done.
I'll go after
Oh,
you.
right, okay. Well, and I just want to make one other point, because I've obviously a direct neighbor and we share property boundaries. And Michael shared with me kind of the efforts that have been taken to make this appear like a natural pond, and using native plants and things like that. And so I think, and I work in the design field as well, and I know that these things, when done right, can be beautiful and can become natural habitats. So if it's going to happen, and it seems like the questions that have already come up, the important questions to keep things native and biodiverse and healthy, and reducing kind of alien materials in construction. So I guess, yeah, if it's going to happen, just upholding and knowing that design efforts have been made to make this thing actually a beautiful, hopefully natural looking feature. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you want me to go?
So I just wanted to point out to, everybody's read this, I'm sure, from Andy, but the non-essential change, he has improvement, but non-essential change on regulated steep slopes I think it's a dangerous road to go down. And so I just wanted to point that out. And also that any failure to this pond in the present site idea causing adverse impacts on the wetlands below is also something which is, disturbing and something to really take into effect. And they say simply that they want Beatty and Watson to do a structural, look at it. But I also understand the, the greater disturbance that would, the alternative would take as well. So it's it's a vexing, question. There you are.
Heidi?
Well, did you want to respond to that,
I
Margaret?
have a couple things.
Okay.
Okay. One, Beatty and Watson doesn't do structural engineering. That doesn't mean there won't be a structural engineer involved with designing the walls. It's just not going to be Beatty and Watson. I didn't say we weren't going to have a structural engineer. It's just not us. And secondly, no matter where we build the pond, could it fail? Obviously, anything could fail, but it doesn't change from one location to the other. It's the same impact. It's just whether or not we're going to build it in an area that has woods and isn't disturbed, or we're going to put it in an area that's already disturbed but has steep slopes on it. Those are the choices. If we don't build it in the steep slopes area, I don't need any permits. Right?
But I'm not a structural engineer either, but it would seem to me that it would be more likely for a failure to happen on a steep slope than it would on a
Well,
a lesser
actually, it's going to be pinned into the ledge rock, so there's very little likelihood of any failure.
Heidi?
I took a look at the steep slopes provision again, the ordinance relating to steep slopes, and I would just like to repeat what I believe I've said at a prior hearing, that it's really clear that the steep slopes provision is supposed to only allow uses that otherwise would really make the property kind of uninhabitable. Like, it says, except as provided in subsection B7 below, on slopes of 20% or greater, land disturbance shall be restricted to only those areas clearly needed for the following. And then it sets forth things like, basically, if you need a driveway, if you have to put a driveway through the steep slope, or other things like that,
But
that are.
Katie, those don't need permits. Those items that are listed do not need a permit.
But the point I'm trying to make is, if we grant a steep slope, a special use permit for this use, there really is no meaning to our steep slopes ordinance. I mean, we're really not protecting the steep slopes. I understand your point that if you put it in the area away from the steep slopes, you don't need a permit. That's fine, but putting it in the steep slopes spot is literally totally contradictory of any protection of steep slopes, because this is an absolutely discretionary feature.
I agree it's a discretionary feature, but it's somebody's property, and the ordinance is permissive, which means you're allowing people to use their property in a responsible way.
But if you put it at the steep slopes, you need a special permit.
Heidi,
I do.
if I could just step in on
Yeah.
that. I think you guys are kind of talking at cross purposes here. What the code says is that for some nominal uses, driveways and the like, you can build in steep slopes, and everything else you're prohibited in building in steep slopes. However, there is an exception, and the exception is this. If someone wants to build in steep slopes, and they can show that in order to accomplish the construction they're proposing, in compliance with the code on non-steep slopes, it would cause more disturbance to the area then if they did build in the steep slopes, then this board has to grant them the approval to build in the steep slopes area because it's less disturbance than if they built in the non-steep slopes area. And what I believe the applicant is trying to argue here is, well, yeah, we're building in steep slopes, but look here, if we built in the non-steep, the alternative area, the non-steep slopes area, we'd have to cut down all these trees, and therefore it would be more disruptive. And so what this board needs to do is weigh the two of them. Gee, there's steep slopes, but is what they're proposing if they built in the alternative area more disruptive than building in the steep slopes? And that's the analysis you need to focus on.
Well, I guess I would say as to that the Conservation Board has weighed in and said that they think that it's, that building on the steep slopes is more disruptive than building in the non-steep slopes.
That's true, and you have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, if I may, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman, I wanted to follow up on what Heidi was saying. I mean, my initial read of the statute, and I made that statement at my first board meeting, there's going to be a lot of consternation figuring this out, but my initial read of that statute is that on a steep slope of 20% or more, you can put in a roadway to gain access to a building site. You can put in drainage facilities, retaining walls and so forth for a building site, things of that nature. But then B7 says that if let me read the exact language because I don't want to paraphrase it. It says, and it's difficult language, but it says the planning board may grant a special permit allowing the disturbance of slopes of 20% or greater for a purpose other than those listed in subsection B1 above, which are the ones I mentioned about road, access roads and so forth, provided that the board makes a written finding that the proposed development would involve less land disturbance and have less overall impact on soils, vegetation, scenic views, and water resources than would development in compliance with subsection B1 of this section, which again is the roads and retaining walls. An example of proper application of the subsection B7 would be to allow building on a site which has a slope exceeding 20%, but which is at a relatively low elevation on a property and requires a short access driveway as compared to a less steep site located at a higher elevation accessed by a longer driveway crossing slopes exceeding 20%. The latter may have a greater impact on the hillside both because of locating the building at a higher elevation and because the longer driveway across steep slopes would involve more land disturbance. Now, there's an interpretation that I understand has been made of this language, but and I think it's as you've indicated, but. And I guess if that's been the interpretation, I'm inclined to have to follow it, but it just doesn't seem to me to follow the language of the statute, which is that, the standard that you're talking about for whether it has more or less disturbance than in compliance with B1 of the code is that, if you put a road in on a steep, you put a building on a steep slope that avoids putting a road in on a steep slope where the road would do more damage than putting the building on a steep slope, then you have an exception from B7, or B1 rather. So what the interpretation, however, that I understand the board has employed over the years is that, I think is as you phrased it, which is that if you have a project and putting the project on a steep slope would do less damage than putting the project somewhere else on the property that's not a steep slope, then you can put it on the steep slope. But here's a concern I have. Let's suppose instead of this application being for a waterfall, it was for, let's say, a water plume ride, just to get an extreme example. Now that's a recreational use. If it's a use that's permitted in a residential district, when presumably it is, then it would be a use that theoretically you could put on a steep slope under this interpretation. And the only showing you have to make, as Margaret is saying, is that if you can say putting the plume ride on the steep slope is less damaging than putting the plume ride on the top of the hill, let's say, then you can put the plume right on the steep slope. And I think what Heidi is saying, and I think what the Conservation Board is saying is that, well, wait a minute, there's gotta be more protection for steep slopes than that. And this is this is my dilemma, trying to understand how to apply this statute to give some meaning to the steep slopes law, but at the same time, allow for some sort of discretion to an applicant. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that's my dilemma here.
Steve, any?
Dave, and it's been brought up many times, if the board is displeased or concerned about the way that the code is written and what it permits as far as construction steep slopes, the remedy is to recommend changes to the town board. Town board may amend the code, but as written, the rule is that if building in steep slopes would have less detrimental effects, as the language is written, than building in an area that is not steep slopes, this board should grant a special permit to allow to build in the steep slopes.
And we're dealing with what's written as of today.
Yes.
Let me just finish this thought then. All right. So then to deal with this application, I think we can agree that this water feature would be a permitted use in this district, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. So then the only showing the applicant has to make here, under the interpretation of the code that we're working with here, is that if putting the water feature on the steep slope does less damage to the environment than putting it up at the top of the hill in the alternative location, then we basically have to approve it.
Yes.
But it says may grant a special permit. It says the planning board may grant a special permit allowing the disturbance.
Shall perhaps, but I mean, your discretion's pretty limited if they can make a showing. Now, the board has some leeway in determining what constitutes damage, and I forget exactly what the wording is as far as that goes, but a detrimental impact. And, you get, as I just mentioned before, to weigh and balance them as far as, gee, this is cutting down trees, that's possibly, eroding the steep slope. And so you have some degree of discretion. But if they make a showing that it's pretty clear that the impact to the steep slopes would be worse than the impact of building in, or vice versa, the impact of building in the non-steep slopes would be worse than building in the steep slopes, you'd be hard-pressed to deny the application. May as opposed to shall notwithstanding.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, Ron, regarding the Conservation Board's recommendations, the new drawings comply with their recommendations, is that correct?
Yeah, they do. I guess one thing the board needs to consider, again, it's this weighing between alternatives. You've been to the site, but you've never looked at this alternative location. The applicants represented that there's greater impact, but I don't think the board nor myself have ever looked in that area to verify what's being represented by the applicant, that it may in fact be less damaging to the environment. I think it may warrant another site inspection for you to make that determination, to do that weighing.
I think in this particular case, it would probably be prudent to do another site visit, to have a look at that. Any comments from the board?
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I get that in a motion? Or do we need a motion?
Make a motion to hold the public, unless you want to be heard further, I don't mean to cut you off.
We did show this alternate location prior to your site visit. I don't know if anybody doesn't remember that part of the property. I mean, if you feel like you need to do another site visit, we can accommodate that.
Comments from the board regarding a second site visit?
Can I just ask a separate question? Sure. But if people have comments on the site visit, I'll wait.
I would like a site visit, another site visit.
I would too.
So what you want then is a motion to hold the public hearing open to schedule a site visit.
Okay, can I have a motion to hold the public hearing open and schedule a site visit? Second site visit.
I'll make that.
Heidi?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, we need dates.
Sunday the 7th or the 14th?
Did you guys vote on that?
No, I don't think you did, I'm sorry.
We have to vote.
Go ahead. All in favor? Aye. Cheryl, the dates again, I'm sorry.
Sunday, the 7th of December, or the 14th?
Good with either one. Okay, 7th,
December 7th?
December 7th? Is that good? Okay.
Yes.
And again, if the site could be staked out so we have clarity.
Hopefully, the stakes for the original one are still there, and we'll stake the new one.
Sorry for any inconvenience, but it seems to be warranted at this stage, so, thank you. Okay, so we'll have a board site visit December 7th at 9:30, and either if they're still staked out or the site's still staked out, if not, it'll be restaked. Thank you, Margaret.
Margaret, at that time, could you stake out the limits of the two ponds so they could evaluate the disturbance in the upper area?
Yep,
Thank
we
you.
did that for the original. I'm hoping those stakes are still in place,
Right.
and we'll do it for the other.
Well, obviously, there seems to be some confusion, not confusion, but concern, so I think it's warranted, honestly, so.
Can I just ask another question?
Sure.
So, I kind of need Ron on this one as well. So can I just ask, so you're saying that the drawings have not been given to Greg to review?
The drawings are never given to Greg to review.
Well, so I guess my question is, and this goes back to just kind of talking about safety and security and some of the concerns regarding the fact that we've been having this conversation about whether it's a pond or a pool. I get it. The category is, it's a pond. It's still 22,000 gallons. It is still 4 feet deep.
So if it's 4 feet deep maximum, but if they hit rock, then it might only be 2 feet deep. But we don't know that because we were going to dig some deep test holes, and that's when they were told to stop and come to get the permit. So we don't know where the bedrock starts and ends.
Okay.
So.
But I guess we had this
could be half
conversation.
that.
Right, but we've
Yeah.
had this conversation in a prior meeting to say, well, then why just we not make the pool or pond shallower? I mean, why can't it be 2 feet? I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, I have a pool, it's 25,000 gallons, I'm required to have a fence. Like, I think now, if you put in a pool, you even have to have a pool alarm. I'm not saying that that's what we're saying, but like, there is a point here where if you have open water source or a water area that's deeper than 3 feet, a child can actually fall in there, and if there is no alarm and there's no fence, that is a question, and it's just a question that I have. So I'm assuming that, does Greg get involved in that? So assuming this gets passed and it goes forward.
Greg would approve the walls, because you need a building permit for the walls. But I mean, I've spoke to him about it because this has been built in a couple of locations in the town. And it has been determined that it's a pond.
At that depth?
I think it's the same depth, I'm not sure, I can find out.
Because there is a difference of a natural formation versus a man-made formation
Right.
that you're creating
But
here.
these-
So I can understand the concerns of, especially if
Right.
it's not fenced in or regulated, and if
Right,
the
but
area is.
there are plenty of
this is
ponds.
Legitimate concerns that the board
There are
has.
many ponds that exist that don't have fences.
I
Right,
understand,
yeah.
and most of those are, I'm assuming, natural ponds.
This would look like a natural pond
I know,
once
but it's being
built.
created.
Yes.
So there is a difference, a distinct
a difference.
difference, so.
I can speak to the client about the depth of the pond. Okay, because we're going to be back here in a month.
Okay.
Just to weigh in on that, I'm sure the board understands this, but, just to lay it all out, this isn't just a yes or no application. You can say, yes, we're going to allow, if you're so inclined, allow this in steep slopes with the following conditions, and if they're rational and they're based on the record, you could be in a position to say a smaller pond is what we'll allow in that area. like, you can't just do it arbitrarily because you don't like big ponds or whatever, you know. Putting up a fence, I don't know. If the building inspector has determined that this is, in fact, a landscaping feature and not a swimming pool, you're gonna be, difficult to say we have a rational basis for, say, put up fencing or something on it. But the 4 feet as opposed to 2 feet, the volume of water posing a risk, that type of thing, if you were inclined to grant an approval conditioned on it being a smaller feature, there, you know, again, the public hearing's not closed yet, but there might be grounds for that kind of thing.
You still could drown in a 2-foot pool too, so, I mean.
Yes, I suppose,
I don't
Dennis,
wanna.
you could. My point was that if.
Yeah, no, I understand, Steve. Yeah. Okay. So the next step for us is really just to go to the second walk, site visit.
Yeah, Ron raises a good point. If the planning board is concerned about it and you feel it's an outstanding issue, landscaping feature as opposed to pool, just have the applicant ask Greg for an email, a letter, something like that. You say you've spoken to him already, it should be easy enough to clear
Because
up the
people are
issue.
going back to the Greg situation,
Yes.
and we obviously rely on our professionals, so.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So as far as this item is concerned, we're just going to
I
this.
believe the board has voted to hold the public hearing open and to schedule a site visit. I don't believe there's any other business on it, unless I'm overlooking something.
There were a couple of comments that this lady had that I can address. One, about the water source. There's not an on-site water source. The water will be brought in. And then itself, I'm sorry, and then it recirculates, okay? And then it does run all year. Yes.
Okay, public hearing has been held open, but that doesn't mean that it's open right now.
Okay.
That
Oh, I'm
means
sorry.
what you're saying is not gonna be part of the record.
Okay.
If you really want it to be, if you wanna have a conversation in the hallway and discuss it, whether
Yes.
you wanna spread it on the record. you
Okay,
wanna send a
because you
memo,
closed
that's
the
fine,
public hearing.
But
Sorry.
you can't
Okay.
carry on now.
Sure.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, next item, old business, the Russell Wright Design Center. Excuse me. Who said this was going? Well, Bob, those are good points. I mean, you don't agree with bringing it.
Sorry, technical difficulties.
Do you want me to pull it up?
Sure. Okay. Good evening. James Hartford from River Architects with Ruchira. Works with me in my office. We are voluntarily working with the Russell Wright Design Center to design a kind of a work shed for the gardening crew at the the Russell Wright house, and we are proposing to locate a gardener's shed on the existing footprint where a previous shed once was. It is within the setback, but it's adjacent to the driveway coming in off of Old Manitou Road, and so it's basically using existing infrastructure there. Oops, sorry. If we can just shift over to. I can't talk and mouse at the same time. And so what we're proposing. So here you can see this is the existing footprint of the previous shed that was there, and what you can see. I don't know if I can point without shifting things around. This is the existing gravel driveway that comes down off of the driveway that brings us up to the Russell Wright house itself, and then this where this once existing 686 square foot shed has been removed, just because the shed was in bad shape, but there are retaining walls and a concrete slab that are there. Essentially, we want to put a shed structure back on that same footprint, and extend the pathway to what we're labeling as a viewing gallery, which is an overlook, so people with disabilities can take vantage points to take in the property, while the house and the gardens are part of the National Historic Register. We can't make the entire property accessible, just given the challenges of the site, but we were trying to open up more opportunities for the public to experience the landscape. And so the shed will have a rooftop garden similar to the house and the studio structure there, a green roof, I should say, which is basically a shallow planted medium with native sedum plants that will not require additional watering once that's established, but will help mitigate the amount of rainfall that runs off the roof. So we're absorbing some water on the site and slowing down the rain storm events. The portions of it will be open to the sky, so that that there are planting areas to start plants that will be used in the landscape, and kind of a garden, like a water feature, so that they're able to water plants and wash up afterwards. But basically, it's tool shed. There will be water and electric to the site, but not toilets or any other features like that. It's adjacent to the house that has an ADA compliant restroom that we actually designed several years ago as a different grant. And that's kind of the project in a nutshell.
Okay. Any comments from the board? Any questions? Heidi?
The only question I have is, so I saw the resolution, and I was wondering if it fully incorporates all of the Conservation Board's proposals, or whether those don't need to go in the resolution, but are just going to be understood that they'll be complied with.
Yes, we were in agreement with the Conservation Board. We met with them already. So things like the green roof was discussed. One of their concerns, which is very valid, we were looking at some kind of porous paver to reduce the amount of hardscape in that, the overlook situation. But it was well pointed out that while a wheelchair may roll on certain surfaces, it would be not beneficial for walkers and other things like that. So we may have to go with, bluestone flags or something like that for the pathway. But they were okay with, that, kind of corrective approach in addressing ADA concerns. But there was some discussion about creating infiltrators, and of course adhering to erosion control measures, but, all that would be certainly included.
Any other questions?
What, where are you
Oh,
including?
I'm sorry. So like silt fencing and things like that, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the points were in the.
Yeah,
Thanks.
here's the
Yeah,
letter.
great, appreciate it.
But those things don't need to go in the resolution, right?
No, the resolution tries to tie those things up by just acknowledging that they're obligated to get a Chapter 93 wetlands water course permit from the town natural resources officer. I've had discussions with Max directly about it. He's satisfied with those conditions, and you've also seen a letter from the Conservation Board or from Max that identifies the issues that he has, but he also acknowledges that the board can move this along.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Ron, that's all in the resolution that you prepared,
That's
correct?
correct, right.
Okay.
The board has previously made necessary referrals, the Conservation Board, as we just described. You've made referral to county planning, they've responded. You previously waived the requirement for a public hearing, given the very minor nature of the project. So you're now at a matter where you can consider the action on the approving resol.
Okay. So Steve, we have to get a motion just for the approval or signing of the,
To adopt the approval resolution, that's it.
okay, can I get a motion to adopt that? Heidi, Peter, thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Humm 230 Jaycox project, the demolition of the existing structure. Hello.
Hi, I'm Jane. I'm from River Architects, and James and Raju are here still. Thank you so much for meeting with us into the night. We prepared some exterior materials rendered on the elevations, so we can take a look at that, as we saw that that was one of the outstanding questions on the memo, and we're prepared to discuss the memo from the site visit that most of everyone on the board attended. So I can pull those drawings up, and we have some samples as well to show you, and some cut sheets if you're interested in taking a closer look. But as mentioned earlier, the exterior materials of the project will be a galvalume standing seam roof, a wood siding, and a gray stucco to match about the tone of the roof. So here are two of the elevations, and the other two here. So it's consistent across the whole project. And I can share some of the samples as well. So this is the pine siding. It's going to be just with a clear oil, so it'll weather naturally. And as it weathers, it turns this gray tone. So it's a thermally modified wood, so it should be a little bit more durable and rot resistant, but still have kind of a natural look. So we're looking at either pine or spruce, and these are some samples if you're interested in taking a closer look. And then we have, but there is, where's the metal? Here is a sample of the metal roof. It's just a standard galvalume standing seam roof. So here's what that looks like. There is a screen porch that has screens all around, and then a polycarbonate roof. So here's a sample of the polycarbonate we're planning on using. It's just a 3-ply standard clear polycarbonate. There's that. And then there is some guardrail fencing around the balcony and the kind of garden shed underneath, and some fencing around the property, especially around the pool. And that's in a cable net. And it's I think it's the same product that's at the Cold Spring dock. So here it is. There's more of it if you'd like to take a look. So those are the materials that we wanted to talk about, because that was something that was mentioned. So happy to talk through any of the comments on the memo. In particular, some of the questions on the music shed we wanted to address. So we spoke with the clients, and because of, the placement of it being within the setback and the concerns of what that space might be, we thought it would be best to just exclude that from the project, no touching that shed, just to not kind of make an issue out of it, since we just didn't want to make it a problem for the project. So we want to exclude the music shed. We just won't deal with it, won't touch it, and that will be it for that, because I know that there were some concerns over that. It's staying in place, just untouched.
Yeah, and let me just weigh in on that a bit. I think it was misconstrued as a music venue. That is completely not the intent ever. Was it ever the intent of that being that? It's not an open mic thing or anything like that. That's just no karaoke. This is, the client is an emergency room pediatrician, and he wanted to have a place to sit and play his acoustic guitar. That's the extent of it, So we made a mistake in referring to it as a music shed. It is not an open mic scenario. It's an existing structure that we're going to do some repairs on. That's it. And so.
Repairs? I thought you weren't going to touch it.
Well, we're not going to touch it, but
But you're going to do repairs.
Stephen, we're going to take it out of the scope entirely. But it was presented as if it was enlarging it and other things, but it's not. There's never the intention. Is that what I'm trying to clarify?
You're not going to be doing any
We are
work
not
on
going
the
to do anything to the shed.
non-music shed.
We are able to make repairs to any structure, of course.
I just need to know what the repairs are.
Oh, yes, but we're not going to touch it. We're taking it out of the scope now. I just wanted to clarify that it is not anything more than an existing shed that will remain as is. That's it.
Steve, was there a requirement to go before the zoning board regarding any work to be done on that shed because of the location?
They're not going to change the shed. It's a moot issue now. But the deal is that if you have an existing non-conforming structure, such as a shed in a required setback, and you want to expand the shed, make it bigger, make it higher, anything along those lines, then you have to go to the ZBA for approval. But if they're not doing anything with the shed, which they just said they're not, then you don't need to worry about that.
Okay. So regarding the demolition of the existing building, the slight expansion of the existing building, creating a new house, is really what's in front of us now. Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Any comments from board members?
Just have one quick question.
Sure.
When we were at this site inspection, there was some question about the septic system, perking and so forth. Has that been resolved?
Yeah, so just a few days after the site visit, we had the civil engineer with the excavator out there checking out a new possible location for the septic tank. And that round of test pits was more successful. So we don't have a fully developed septic plan, but the new location, I could just pull it up on the existing plans just to describe where it will go, but it will of course be part of our permit application.
Now that the sanitary system layout has been confirmed, does that require removal of any trees?
So there will be some trees that will have to be removed. When we were on site, there were some trees that were flagged. There was a trio of trees that were closer to the backyard that we pointed out. Those will no longer have to be removed, which we're really happy about. There are two large trees, we've been calling them the peace sign trees, that are unfortunately right over where the septic is, and they're also very large and would, if they were to fall on the house, they would take the house out. So for the safety of the new structure, and also because the septic is going to be going there, we'll have to remove those along with a few others just along the driveway. So in the revised septic drawings will make sure to point out the trees that will have to go for the new septic. The owners have said that they're hoping to plant new trees, especially where you can kind of see a few of the neighboring houses through some trees. They wanted to plant some evergreens just to protect everyone's privacy further. So we're hoping that the number of new trees will, at least outnumber what has to go.
Well, understood. So you're identifying that there's plan revisions that are still to be made. You're now finalizing the sanitary design. You're modifying the reference to the existing shed, that it will remain. So when can those revised plans be submitted?
We have a meeting with the civil engineer tomorrow, so before the next meeting.
Okay, then that's exactly the reason for the question. The board remains to make a decision on whether or not to have a public hearing. It's discretionary for these residential projects. Given its location, proximity to Jaycox Pond, you should determine whether you wish to have a public hearing or not. There's also private neighbors along that private road, private driveway that may be of interest, but those matters should be discussed and resolved tonight if you wish to have a public hearing.
Yeah, but given that they're submitting revised plans, are they ready to have a public hearing?
No, that's all of what I'm describing.
To have it's at our
You're
discretion.
saying whether or not to have one, and I understand that's an issue, but even if you decide, well, I guess if you decide not to have one, it's not an issue, but if you decide to have a public hearing, I don't know that you're ready to schedule it because you don't have the final plans before you. People are gonna come in talking about the music shed, for example.
When do you expect to have a full set of plans that you could present?
So the only revisions then would be to rectify the music shed and explain that it's out of scope, and also to show the new septic location and the trees that would be coming down from that. So with those changes in mind, a week maybe. I have to talk to the civil engineer because the septic isn't on us, and he's been making strides with that. So maybe within a week.
Okay, well, the board, would not see them until next month, so just to give you an idea. Any comments from the board regarding holding off scheduling a public meeting or having a public meeting since it is at our discretion, or waiting to get the revised plans? Wait to get the plans? Okay, everybody in agreement? We don't need to make a motion on that, Steve, do we?
I'm sorry, what's the?
Regarding holding off, making a decision on a public
No,
hearing.
you don't. I mean, if there were people, board members, who felt that there should be no public hearing, they could certainly speak up on that issue now. If you're inclined to have a public hearing, you can hold off until you see the plans to make your determination one way or the other. But you don't need to make a resolution at this time.
Okay. I personally would prefer to see the completed plans and more information before we schedule a public meeting, so. I believe, Ron, do you have any other comments regarding that? I think we're pretty well
No,
covered.
those were the only issues of note for this project.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you. One item that we do need to mention, and we should have did it at the beginning of the meeting, is that starting next year, our planning board meetings will be the fourth Thursday of the month.
So January 22nd.
January 22nd, starting that, so. Pass the word. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Second? As far as I'm.
Yeah,
Wait, you gotta vote.
Hearing schedule,
Make sure you get
isn't there
all
one?
in favor. This last thing we didn't
One.
get.
Which one what?
Yeah.
They're all like getting ready to leave.
Can I get a vote on the adjournment? We did.
We did, okay.
Okay.